Today we leave Florence and Flanders to travel to Rome. We're going to spend 2 days focusing on about 40 years and 4 artists: Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Titian. This is Ninja Turtles time. But first, a little historical background. In the late 15th century, Pope Sixtus IV summoned artists to decorate the newly constructed Sistine Chapel. These artists included Botticelli, Ghirlandaio, and Perugino, whose painting of Christ delivering the keys to the kingdom to St. Peter you see here. This painting is not required, but it's important for several reasons, and I could imagine you're being asked to identify its Renaissance elements. First, it's an excellent example of mathematical linear perspective, shown especially clearly in the tile patterns of the square. It lovingly replicates classical architecture, although the building in the center is a fantasy temple, not an actual classical building. Finally, the content or subject is especially appropriate for Rome. Remember that the papacy had recently undergone hard times. It was exiled to Avignon, then split between Avignon and Rome. Popes were now eager to reassert their leadership of the church and Rome's central place in the church. The imagery of Christ delivering the keys to St. Peter is all about reestablishing Rome, not only as the center of the church, but also as the center of European culture. While our story now moves beyond Florence, the man whose name became synonymous with the High Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci, was in fact nurtured in the Florence of the Medici. So let's watch a video clip about his early days in Florence. I like this because it talks about the status and training of artists in the Renaissance, and also because it reviews tempera and oil paint. After his apprenticeship with Verrocchio, Leonardo moved to Milan, where he spent the next 20 years as a court painter and military engineer and stage set designer and general errand boy to Ludovico Sforza, the Duke of Milan. The Duke was a fearsome military leader and a determined patron of the arts. You may recall from your textbook that Leonardo sold himself to the Duke primarily as a military engineer. He just mentioned in passing that he painted better than anyone else. We don't have time to show this interesting segment on Leonardo as a scientist, but you should feel free to watch it on your own. Okay, this is an oversimplification, sorry, but when we looked at the paintings of the early Italian Renaissance, the 1400s or 15th century, we saw two somewhat separate strands. There was the mathematical strand, with artists applying the rules of perspective to create optically accurate depictions of three-dimensional space. Masaccio was a good example of that. And there was the poetical, even sentimental strand, as represented by Botticelli and Fra Filippo Lippi. In Leonardo, the mathematical and the poetic merge brilliantly, and this painting, which is not one of our required works, offers an excellent illustration of this new synthesis. Note that the sweetly beautiful figures evoke Botticelli's goddesses and Madonnas, but the complex, precise composition echoes the mathematical brilliance of Masaccio. These diagrams help us see how the multiple isosceles triangles draw our eye dynamically to the figure. Leonardo also takes chiaroscuro, or the contrast of light and dark, to new heights, in part because he is a master of the new medium of oil painting. Sfumato means smoky or hazy or misty, and it's a characteristic of Leonardo's paintings that many of his successors would try to imitate. Even though he has masterful command of line, Leonardo deliberately blurs the boundaries of his figures, again trying to capture how our eye perceives reality. We see Leonardo's optical insight in the use of atmospheric perspective, imitating the way the eye sees more distant features as less distinct, paler, and bluer than objects in the foreground. And finally, and this is still another way that Leonardo combines poetry with precision, the painting makes the figures an integral part of their landscape and ties the figures to one another with gestures and the pyramidal composition. This gives the painting a rare unity and coherence, a unity and coherence that we will see echoed in the Last Supper, which is our required work. Oops, sorry, building those triangles. This slide illustrates atmospheric perspective. Note that the image in the right-hand corner is actually a photograph. So this painting of Ludovico Sforza's 15-year-old mistress isn't in your textbook, but it may be my favorite Leonardo da Vinci painting. I actually find her expression even more intriguing than the famous Mona Lisa's. What is she looking at? Is she resigned? Contented? There's a detailed analysis of the painting in your workbook, and alas, we don't have time. And I'm not going to linger here either. We are so familiar with the Mona Lisa that it's almost impossible to see it with new eyes, and it didn't make the list. But you recognize Leonardo's masterful use of chiaroscuro, sfumato, and atmospheric perspective, right? Well, I may be irked with the College Board for omitting other Leonardo paintings and many other Italian Renaissance paintings, but I agree that this one is very important. The Khan Academy podcast on this work is especially good, so please don't skip it. As our experts pointed out, the Last Supper was a common theme in Renaissance art and a common decoration for the refectory or dining room of monasteries. But it also posed a compositional challenge. How do you make a lineup of men sitting at a table interesting? I'd argue that Ghirlandaio doesn't entirely succeed with the image you see here. So how did Leonardo depart from the conventions shown in this early Renaissance painting, which, by the way, was made just 15 years earlier? Well, most notably, of course, he puts Judas on Christ's side of the table. Betrayal is, in a way, just one more of the human reactions to Christ that we see. But he also shows the figures dynamically interrelating with a range of emotions as they respond to Christ's statement that one of you will betray me. Leonardo spent hours wandering the streets of Milan sketching faces, looking for the best possible model for each disciple. The Khan Academy homework did a good job of describing Leonardo's complex use of geometry and perspective in this painting, so I'll move through the next few slides quickly. By grouping the disciples into threes, Leonardo gave the painting a dynamic rhythm that contrasts with Christ's stillness at the center. And of course, the Last Supper became the textbook example of one-point linear perspective. There are too many great videos about this work, and I probably haven't exercised enough self-control, but I'm going to make life difficult for my friend and teaching partner by suggesting that you watch 2 more short clips about Leonardo's innovative technique and why it went wrong. This also usefully reviews fresco techniques. And if you want to know more, the link for this documentary is up on Moodle. Curators have made several attempts to restore the Last Supper. The most recent restoration took 21 years and was finished in 1999. It has proved very controversial with art historians, many of whom think the restorers took way too many liberties with Leonardo's work. So what do you think? In my next video, I'll move on to our next superstar, Michelangelo, another extraordinarily versatile talent who got bossed around by his patron, this time Pope Julius II. But first, I'd like to note that the Last Supper has become a cultural icon, and some of the results have been more than a little weird. Did the Last Supper really serve to sell jeans? And may the Force be with you.